adjust as well.
Are you capturing? So the broadcast has started, by the way. So are you capturing those in the notes doc?
No, but I can.
That'd be great.
Okay.
And if people want to sign up for as being present, then you get credit for attendance.
Yeah.
Or not. I still have a recurring nightmare that like I'm in college and I'm taking a math class and I don't show up for class like all semester and then I show up for the final.
I have one of those too, except mine is like I discover that I did that like I was all ready to finish my master's degree, but I find that there's this one course that I didn't complete or something that's going to hold me back. Okay, so somewhere in here I can put, actually what I was thinking of doing is actually opening an issue in the repo to say, here's our proposed agenda.
Yeah, that's great.
So I think I'll do that and then add that link instead of like trying to capture what we had in here. So yeah, I'll mute while I do that so I don't type in the way, but otherwise.
Okay, let's get started then. You know, the minutes, I didn't get them typed up I've been heads down on some other stuff, so I've sort of been not paying too much attention here. I typed the minutes up, and there's a PR open for those. I think everything here is on the agenda still. People can look at those, that PR for the minutes from last time, and then you know, chime in if you have comments if I missed anything. So the strategic initiatives 185, I think one of the actions here was to have a new label, which I opened, which is called tracking issue. So we can start tagging things as tracking issues, and then they, you know, if they relate to sort of another thing, a number of other issues, and so we can help categorize some of these things. I think that was one of the complaints with this. I think some of the other actions there, there was an action to clean up the issues. I don't know if that got any traction. I thought somebody was closing some stuff up.
Yeah, I started to close some issues that were stalled or already resolved. And I also listed all our issues and categorized them.
Oh, you did? Sweet.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I commented on the issue, on the strategic initialization.
Sorry, what was that last?
Yeah. What?
Oh, you made a comment on that open issue around it?
Yeah.
Okay. I see that, yes. So what's the next step here? Like,
I don't think we should have responsibles or assignments for those categories. For example, James has mentioned he would be willing to do that for trace events, Michael for the Diagnostic Channel, no, for the node report into core. I'd be willing to do that for the CPU profiling, and I think it would help us to communicate better and to know who to talk with about each one of those tasks.
Yeah, I'd add that I also think that in each of these meetings, it would be good to get sort of an update. And by having somebody who kind of owns it, not owns it, but like whatever you want to call it, you know who should give the update, and then it'll be clear if we're making progress, not making progress, that kind of stuff.
I agree with that. Does anybody have any concerns about going ahead and assigning owners to these things?
I mean, we've called them things like champions in the past just to avoid, like, it's not like the person owns it. It's more that they're just helping to move it forward.
Sure.
But
should we use
I'd maybe try and like make sure we have multiple people on things, just so it's not like one person just goes and does a thing and no one looks at it.
Yeah, I mean, if we can get multiple volunteers, it's more like one person is making sure it moves forward, but you're right, it shouldn't be one person doing all the work, that's for sure.
Like, I just mean like that there should at least be like another person who's like explicitly volunteered, at least as like a reviewer or something.
What do we call that person? A sub-champion?
Antagonist.
An antagonist?
I would almost, if it's two people volunteering to help move it forward, you could have two, you could have co-champions, or I think in the TSC one, I think one of the suggestions that was being moved to was like stakeholders. So there are other people who've volunteered to be active and are participating.
I'm fine with that. Like if you want to say like champion plus stakeholders, if you want to say co-champ, I mean, I kind of like the idea of like, one name being on the hook for things, right? Not necessarily that they have to do it, but it's like, yeah, go talk to Bob, right? And then they can kind of delegate or deflect or whatever as appropriate. And if, they're dropping the ball or running out of time or have other priorities, and we can adjust that, right? I like the idea of other people sort of being named as like, hey, you're involved, you're watching this, and I think that's a fair suggestion. I'm open to terminology. I think champions is good.
I like champions plus stakeholders.
Champions plus stakeholders?
Yeah.
Yeah, it works for me.
Right.
I don't know. I really like that antagonist.
Antagonist.
Maybe we should do like protagonist, Protagonists. But maybe Ellie knows something we don't. I don't know. All right. So then the next step here is to go through and assign the champions to these things. And if people just want to kind of chime in on, as stakeholders, they can just, update the sort of the tracking issue to say that they are a stakeholder in these things. Is that how we want to do it?
I think
tracking issue would have a list of people that's like.
Or does it make sense to PR in somewhere, like on the README or something, or a separate doc there that just has the list, and then people can PR themselves in if they want to volunteer? Or
we could. I worry about doc rot with that, but if people think that's useful, I think that's good. Part of what I'm thinking is, I don't want things to go too process heavy, but if people think it's useful, then that's great. I mean, one of the nice things about issues is they're really dynamic, and anybody who wants to sort of listen in can just, add a notification on an issue and they're notified. That doesn't tend to reflect people that are actively involved, which is why I thought like if there's sort of like a template for like, hey, this is a tracking issue, and part of the template is like, the list of stakeholders, and you can just keep that dynamic as to whoever wants to be involved. And, somebody can say like, hey, I want to be involved. And then somebody can go in and edit the issue. I don't think anybody's going to sit there and say like, no, you can't be a stakeholder, unless maybe somebody's highly antagonistic. I don't know.
My thought is like having one list, top level list somewhere would be good, whether that's like the first element of an issue or whatever else is less important. But like if there's separate issues, it's a little harder to go out and find those potentially.
We can use the wiki, maybe. I mean, that's less process heavy than.
Right. You don't have to PR that in and.
Which wiki? What wiki is this?
Just the wiki.
Every repo has a wiki.
Yeah, the repo wiki.
Okay.
Which we probably did not enable if you know about it, but.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, it's something we can. So some people hate wikis. Some people love them. But I don't think it's easy to turn on if we don't have it turned on, I believe. I think we just want a link from the first README page then that would be like, here's the list of our initiatives that are going on, right? And then in the wiki, it could have the list that says, here's the champions and here's the stakeholders or whatever. So let's see where, okay, wiki, there's the link there. I can, basically all we have to do is click the button that says create the first page.
Okay. So, does somebody want to go ahead and then just, is everybody cool with this approach? So if I understand correctly, and just tell me, like, let me paraphrase it. We're going to set up a README that's going to be in the root of the diagnostics repo. It's going to say like, hey, these are the issues we're currently working on. It'll say like, CPU profiling. It'll say this is the champion. Here's a list of stakeholders, and here's the tracking issue, and the tracking issue will reference all of the other sub issues. Is that how it's going to work? And then
so
it's bounce to the wiki page. It'll just pick up the README.
Well, I think we already have a README, so we could put a link on that README to the wiki page, and then it's the wiki page that has that table.
Okay, I thought the wiki page was generated out of the README, but no.
The wiki is just like any wiki, where I think anyone can just edit it. So okay. I think it's good for something that, for representing information that could change like more rapidly than if someone had to open up here each time. So that's the only reason I suggested it.
Okay, is people are cool with that?
I think we need a champion for someone that is responsible for updating the wiki, but.
Well, hopefully that's not a huge amount of work in terms of people should be like if you're the champion of an area, you should be adding yourself, right?
Have we identified anybody who's doing actual work?
In terms of that's the I'm trying to get stuff going on the Node report.
Okay.
And I have Richard, who's within our team, who's identified to work on that. So I was going to work on him with that in terms of if you count that real work. I'm still hoping he's going to do most of the heavy lifting.
Yeah, I'm not doing any real work.
I think Mateus is doing real work, right?
No, I meant as a joke. I think we were trying
okay. Well, okay.
I'm being serious. I'm like, I've got like other stuff that's breathing down my neck at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay. So who wants to go ahead and just kind of like blaze this forward with like setting up the wiki and setting up this stuff, and like, is anybody in disagreement with this approach? Everyone's positive?
No.
Okay. So it's no, you're not in disagreement. Okay. So so who wants to blaze it forward? Any volunteers?
I can be the champion of the wiki.
You're the champion of the champions? Okay.
Not better, yeah.
Perfect.
And the antagonist is everyone else here. So make sure I do it.
Okay. Well, now we'll ask you about it next meeting, right? It'll be on our list. I mean, I think we should have like on our regular meeting, one of the agenda items is just a review of these things. Because if we've said that we're volunteering to be the champion or whatever, we think we've more important. So at least just doing a quick update, even if that update is sorry didn't have any time, is worthwhile.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it would naturally just, well, I don't know. I mean, I think for the agenda stuff gets driven by the issues. And so as long as there's tracking issues open that are tagged on the agenda, then we'll pulse on them in the meetings. And so we should cover that stuff. And I think as part of that is like do we have the right set of antagonists in place and whatnot? And I'm afraid that name might stick now. Might scare people away. Okay. Anything else with 185? Are we ready to move on, or this is strategic initiatives issue here? I assume silence is we're ready to move on. Okay, so
I'll just take a note for you under that one there of what we agreed.
Great. Next one is Diagnostics Channel number 180. I don't have any update here. I'm trying to find somebody on my end that is going to sign up to do some work here, and I am not a very persuasive person. So I don't know if anybody else has any update there.
I made that prototype like several weeks ago. I don't know if anyone ever looked at it or not.
I looked at it very briefly.
It's on my bookmarks bar.
Stephen, do you want to be the champion for the Diagnostics Channel?
I suppose.
There we go.
Sounds good.
There's a little reluctance there, but I'll ignore that. So you haven't done any more work on that?
No, just kind of put together the prototype and then just was hoping to get some feedback on it at some point and just been off work stuff.
Since I missed the last couple of meetings, sorry if I ask a little bit more context on that. Is it like a fresh start, or is it leverage some of the stuff that the earlier work on the Diagnostic Channel had done, or?
It's like totally fresh starts, and it's not really as complete as the other Diagnostic Channel thing is. It doesn't have like actual proper like monkey patches for things or anything. It's just kind of like the theoretical model for it, and it was kind of mostly started as just an experimentation ground for a couple different ideas I wanted to try. The main one was just trying to produce like a just generic like messaging bus around diagnostics data. So it treats like the events of like a trace span the same way as like metrics data or things like that. So you can just have one thing that listens to everything. Just specify what you want to listen to.
Yeah, I'll try and take a look at it, and I'll try and get some folks here that I know should have an interest in this stuff to take a look at it, and see if we can move this along. I haven't had a chance to look. I looked very briefly, to be honest.
Kelvin had to step out. FYI.
Okay. Or anything else in Diagnostic Channel stuff?
Nothing for me.
Okay. So the working group deep dives, I think that's still open. If people have, if people want to do a topic or they want to see a topic, I think chime in on that issue. That's number 168. I think the plan was for us to do something around the async context stuff, and we'll try and find some time to maybe do that. I think some of the things we're talking about I feel like they're sort of settling into some more settling in around some of the terminology and some other stuff. So maybe it'll be a good time in a few weeks, maybe a month or so to do that. So 148, the Node CPU profiling roadmap. Matthias?
The VHCL is still open. I think it will take a few more weeks to land. And earlier today, I opened a pull request on Node to add tests for Linux birth. So you can start to see when it breaks, or at least avoid it to break on future V8 releases.
Sorry, so you said you've got a PR that's still open, and that's a PR on V8 to support the events?
Yeah, to add the code event listener API to replace the -- first basic proc, which is not supported by V8.
Okay. And then you have a PR open on Node to basically run through some test pass to ensure that this functionality continues to work.
Yes.
Okay.
Does that require the V8 one landing first, or?
No, it's not a requirement. It requires that V8 6.7 lands on Node, but other than that.
Sorry, which version of V8? You were chopping up a bit there.
The last one, the one that will land on 29.
Okay, so you're going
Yeah.
out there in the audio. I'm having a hard time.
Oh.
What's the last thing you said?
The V8 version that will land on Node by May 29, probably.
Okay.
You said May 29th? Okay.
Yes.
Is that 6.7 or later? Anyway, okay.
Okay.
So
That's it from my side.
Okay. Anything else from anyone on this? Great progress, by the way. Okay, async hook stable API tracking issue number 124. Ali, you probably have the most context here. I know you just opened an issue around exit criteria.
Yeah, so I had a to-do from, I think, the penultimate meeting about defining the exit criteria. So I opened an issue for that. It's more of a discussion. This particular issue, I think, is good for tracking concrete tasks that need to happen. But there's, I think, some more sort of discussion level questions about what does it even mean to exit experimental? What is non-experimental in the context of something as foundational as this? So I opened an issue for that earlier today, and please take a look at that one. So other things related to async hooks. So I think the main so the biggest thing right now is there's a regression on Node 10 where async hooks is currently broken, and I think the V8 team is working on. So there's optimizations that the V8 team did to improve async hooks performance in the last couple of months. It turns out that since there's no integration testing of async hooks that happens, like so the semantics are not as well specified, and that the fact that V8 doesn't know what APM vendors test for, and Node doesn't have tests that those break, so that functionality was broken. So I think the V8 team is trying to figure out what all do they need to back out in order for this to get fixed. Beyond that, there was discussion. There was an issue open, issue number 188, with the proposal on what we need to change in promise hooks in order to address some of the performance concerns. I think that discussion has died down without reaching a conclusion. I need to take a second look at that one to try to figure out how to move forward on that one. Andreas had some concerns with at least some of the proposals, and I think the outstanding thing there would be try to figure out what precise things are objectionable and whether a subset of those are still doable or somehow move that forward. That's the update from my side.
Great. Anyone else have anything with that? Okay. So moving on, async context formalization diagnostic support. So I don't have really anything new here other than what I anticipate we'll do next week is we'll try and take the stuff that's been in this sort of private repo that we've been kind of iterating on and try and get it in some consistent form. We've had some changes around some of the names of stuff and open a PR into this working group for that stuff. And part of the reason there is to sort of force the issue of people saying like, no, you're thinking about it way wrong, or people to be like, oh yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I don't know that it's in its final form. We've had some conversations here about what it would mean to take some of this stuff and get it through TC39. And there's probably some more terminology changes around that. But I kind of expect something along those lines, along a PR next week. And then Mark is going to be in, and he's not on the call today unless he joined. I don't think he is. But he's going to be in at the Collaborator Summit in Berlin, is it?
Yeah.
And so he can discuss all this stuff there with people. So I encourage folks, if there's stuff in there that you're like, I don't understand this, I disagree with it, I think you're wrong, I think about it a different way, it's like either chime in, when we get this PR open, or talk to Mark about it in Berlin, or reach out to me personally about it, yeah, that's all I got there. Any questions around that? Okay, so trace event tracking issue number 84. I don't know, I haven't really been following. I know that there's been some PRs from James on this stuff.
I can do an update. So I think this tracking issue needs a champion to actually go clean it up. I think lots of things that are in there are probably already done or way soon to be done, or pull requests have been open to address those. I think James volunteered. But as a brief update, so we have a JavaScript API that James added a little while ago. Other things that have happened is perf events. Those automatically generate trace events. So that means perf hooks automatically get hooked up. There's a pull request open that I think it's about to land today that adds support for exposing trace events onto on the inspector protocol. So any CLI tools or debuggers that talk to the Chrome DevTools protocol on the inspect port can now get trace events, enable or disable tracing, and that provides us a mechanism to have out-of-process or out-of-machine processing of trace events. So if you have a machine sitting on the side or a processing is sitting on the side that's controlling tracing. There's a bunch of other pull requests that are open and more features being added. TLDR is that there's quite a bit of functionality that has been added recently, and this is shaping up pretty nicely. Needs more testing though, so please try it out.
Do we have any, like CI-wise, do we have any test coverage from that perspective?
We have tests in like normal JavaScript tests that basically ensure that trace events works. I don't know if they're comprehensive enough. There's a few. There's at least 10. So I don't know if they're comprehensive enough. But as people build tooling on top of this, I think that would be the best way of finding the holes and finding the flaws. Testing can only go so far with this one.
Yeah, I was just wondering if if people are looking to help, is this something where we could list like, here's a list of X tests that would be useful to write? If that's feasible, it's worth doing, and maybe, that's a concrete thing that new people could help out with. If it's more like, well, it takes too much of a ramp up to get to that point, then maybe it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so off the top of my head, I don't think there's testing that's lacking. I think so we have enough tests to make sure that trace events get generated, the file has the right events, and I have reasonable confidence that the events are getting generated and written properly. There are edge cases which I think will only get exposed when something is operating at the control plane, right? So let's say if you have a agent sitting externally that's going to repeatedly enable disable, or it's going to enable disable very frequently, or it's going to do some post-processing of the events to do some inferences, and you realize, well, you see some of the timestamps don't add up, or there's a hiccup in the middle. Those are types of things that are missing at this point, and those might not necessarily be easy tests to write unless you are already building a domain-specific tool.
Right, they're more system level versus unit tests, is what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I was just thinking if there was help needed there, then we might make an appeal, but it sounds like not. So,
in my opinion, not. But James may have a different perspective. He's been doing most of the work recently.
Okay. Anything else there, Ali?
No, that's about it.
All right. The last thing on the agenda is to discuss blocking on zones, proposal number 340. I don't know if anything's come up here from the TSC again. And if this is something people are still talking about.
I haven't in the meetings. I haven't heard. There hasn't been any discussion on this. Just reminding myself.
So, what is what's the motivation here for taking this through TC39, taking zones through TC39?
I think Bradley might be the best person to answer that one. I think he had some concerns about the ecosystem, the broader JavaScript ecosystem needing this anyway, and that was out, like, not just in the diagnostic context, but more of being able to write, being able to have program and its understandability and proper error handling semantics that JavaScript developers can use. But he's the right person to answer that one. Okay. And he wanted something like this to be taken to TC39.
Okay.
It's also worth thinking about it beyond just the JavaScript level. Like, WebAssembly is becoming popular in the browser and in Node, and we currently have like zero story on how to deal with that. Just like from like APM perspective, being able to like track through like async barriers in like within WebAssembly code would be super valuable.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think, was this tagged with diagnostic agenda just in terms of, what it needs is somebody who's interested in investing time and pushing it forward. And the thought was there was a synergy with the diagnostics working group. So I think that's why it was tagged as a place.
Yeah. I mean, Yeah, I don't know. I posted a comment in here. I mean, I have a strong opinion about it, I think. And I don't know that, I think it would be great if, if Bradley or whoever else was championing this could, I could talk to them at some point and understand where they're coming from. I think my point of view is that Zones is a higher level API than what we really have, I think, currently defined semantics to reason about, right? And so I feel like in some sense it's a little bit premature. And I said this in the comment. I only got 1 thumbs up. I got no thumbs down. So can you even do a thumbs down on a?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, so I guess that's mildly positive. But that's my take, right? My take is that there is a foundational level thing, and that you can then sit there and describe, and you should be able to describe very crisply zone semantics over top of this foundational level thing, and you should be able to then reason about its correctness, right? And without this foundational level thing, I kind of feel like Zones is a little, it's very nebulous, right? It's very hard to kind of reason about. And I think that's the problem that happened before, right? When people tried to take it to TC39, it just bogged down, right? So that's my read. If this continues to come up in the TSC thing, it's like, and I think there's overlap with this, with both the, the async context or async context formalization stuff, as well as the tracking issue that Ali just opened, right? And I think they're all sort of hinting around the same thing, right?
Right.
And that's my take.
So basically, your take is we've got to finish the formalization first.
Yeah, I mean, my take is like we should be able to describe zones and the semantics of zones, continuation local storage, error handling across asynchronous boundaries, or error propagation across asynchronous boundaries, right? We should be able to define that in some, or explain it in some well-defined terms, right? That is, we should have some fundamental, concepts defined, and some fundamental data structures in place that we can say, like, when you're doing continuation local storage, this is what's happening across this data structure, and everybody's able to nod their head and agree, right? And, when you say, like, oh, I want something to deviate from this specific algorithm, everybody's, oh, yeah, okay, I nod my head and I agree, right? And, without that, it's hard to make, it's hard for me to have confidence that 2 people talking about semantics or behavior are on the same page, right?
Well, when the zones proposal started, it was actually somewhat more low level than it is now, and it kind of became like more high level because it was just deemed that TC39 would not really want to deal with something that low level, because like it used to get into like how the scheduler works and all that kind of stuff, and like actually exposing the scheduler.
Huh, that's interesting.
All that got pulled out, which I actually would have really liked if that stayed there, because there's a bunch of cool stuff you can do with that, but it didn't really work out.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if there's old revisions of that somewhere. That would be interesting to see, right? I think that what, just talking with our TC39 rep here, what we were told was, it's like, is to the extent possible that you can phrase this stuff in the terminology of the existing spec, that's a good thing. And, I don't claim to sort of be an expert on the ECMAScript spec, but, I think that if, people are talking about, defining what this API is, I think at some level it needs to be defined on top of some of these foundational concepts that are already defined in the spec, right? At least that's what I would expect. So, and I don't know if scheduling stuff is in the spec. maybe that's why people were like, it should be pulled out. But they certainly have some stuff in the spec in terms of like, I don't know, there's like a execution context or something, right? And so I think some of these things can be defined in terms of in that terminology.
From my point of view, I think we should remove the diagnostic agenda label from this issue. So from what I can see, there's nobody who's, as far as I know, nobody's trying to champion this as a proposal for TC39. So without that, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. So
okay,
if you have another proposal that you want to take to TC39, I think that's probably more concrete thing that we should talk about. Unless somebody wants to really step up and move this forward.
Yeah, I could see that the comment being here, well, it's not that we don't think that maybe there should be work here, but there's other work that needs to be completed first, for example, on the terminology, and that's where this group is focusing its effort unless somebody else comes up and volunteers. So we're going to take it off the agenda until that happens.
Yeah, and so I personally would have preferred zones as an API, but I certainly don't have the bandwidth or the ability to champion this. So I think with that in mind, I think we should remove the label and figure out if we should close out the issue.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let Ali, you or Michael or somebody go. I can't update it since it's in the TSC thing. So I'll let you guys either close it or remove the label, do whatever it is you need to do. I think with respect to the Zones API thing, I think as an API, I think it's fine. And I think it just comes down to this question of how do you describe what the API is supposed to be doing, right? Is that at sort of this, can you do that in a crisp enough way, right? Okay, I think that's it here. There's nothing else on the agenda. Does anyone else have anything else?
Nope. Just before we go, I'm just pasting in the chat. Does that look like a reasonable comment on the issue?
Yeah, that looks fine to me. And that fully aligns with my opinion. I haven't heard anybody disagree with my opinion. So,
Ali, does it sound reasonable to you as well?
Yeah, sounds fine.
Okay.
It looks like there's some viewers on the YouTube thing. Does anybody can anybody go and look at that and see if there's any questions before we hang up?
I'll take a look right now. I'd be able to see it from the public view, right?
Yeah, I posted a link on the, here, let me.
Someone was asking how they can join the conversation. Well, let's talk about the last question first, which is there any efficient library for MySQL from the Node team?
Is there a library for MySQL?
Yeah. So I think for questions like that, I think Node.js help repo might be a better place to ask, or the IRC channels. I don't think that I personally don't have opinions about the MySQL library for Node, but other people might have. This may not be the right forum for it.
Yeah, I'd agree. You'd likely get the best answers in one of those two channels.
And the second question was how to join the conversation. So, and I guess the answer to that one is that in the Node.js org on GitHub, there's a diagnostic repository, and that one actually has a link to join the meeting. If people are interested in joining, I think it would be good to have more participants and who join the diagnostic effort. So
the other thing I'll add is it's also if you have the foundation calendar, the meetings are scheduled there, so you can find out when they are there, and then there should also be an issue in the repo, like Ali says. I'll paste into the minutes the example for this week's meeting. And I don't know, can the I'm not sure if people can see the chat in the YouTube, but I've pasted it in our internal chat too, just in case.
That's it from the YouTube questions.
that's it for now.
All right. Anything else from anyone?
Not from our side.
All right.
So we'll look forward to seeing at least some set of you at the Collaborator Summit in a few weeks.
Yeah. I want to see you guys.
We'll miss you.
Should be fun. My first trip to Berlin.
Well, enjoy. All right. We'll talk to you all later.
See you later. Bye.
Hey, everybody. Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.